Thank you very much. Please be seated. Thank you very much. Waziri Deborah Baraza, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Health, Kenya. Heads of delegation here. The CDC Deputy Director, the WHO Country Director, Amit, and my good friend Emmanuel, and all attendees. Good morning. Let me begin by saying that I'm happy to be together with you today. I do not intend to take up much of your time. It's not my business to take up your time. You are the guys who are planning for the future. We have done our part. So ninimalize niende nikafanya yangu ya nyumbani na nyinyi muendelee. But let me begin by appreciating through you, Dr. Davis, the University of Nebraska and your entire team for inviting us to come and join you and to give some of our perspectives that could hopefully give our continent the ability to take charge of its health sector in collaboration with other international organizations, but more importantly with our own organizations such as our Africa CDC, as is represented here. And I'd like just to go back a little bit and recall the year 2020, which was the beginning of a very difficult time for us as a country, for the world, but also for me individually. When our world basically came to a standstill, taking everybody by complete surprise and forcing nations to begin to ask themselves when this pandemic would actually arrive at our respective doorsteps. As president at the time, and in consultation with my cabinet, we found it prudent, well before the disease was found within our borders, to set up the National Emergency Response Committee on Coronavirus. The role of this committee, chaired by the then Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe, was to help steer the country and to navigate the uncertain season with an emphasis on coordinating capacity building of medical personnel and other professionals to enable our country to respond quickly and effectively to any suspected cases or outbreak of the virus that would occur or could occur at that time anywhere in the Republic. Other roles of this committee included enhancing of surveillance at all our points of entry, preparation of national and county private isolation and treatment facilities, because we began by having immediate sessions, and I convened an immediate session with the Council of Governors to work on this. We began to coordinate the supply of testing kits that would be critical, looking out for medical products, supplies, pharmaceuticals, and masks, and other protective gear that were available within the Republic, as well as identifying isolation and treatment facilities, as you heard a little bit from Amit, who spoke before me. And all this we did knowing that sooner or later we would be confronted by the coronavirus. And all these measures we put in place in the month of February 2020, and indeed, as fate would have it, on the 13th of March the same year, we got our first ever COVID-19 case, a 27-year-old woman who had just traveled to Kenya from London. This, ladies and gentlemen, marked the beginning of a long year, not only in the health sector, but throughout all sectors of Kenya's economy. It affected us economically, socially, and as all of you know, our Kenyan culture is founded on community, on gatherings, and these, unfortunately, became the first casualties. For we had to ban all public gatherings. We did initially give reprieve to churches and businesses at large because we were worried about what would happen to all those who were employed and working in these various sectors. But again, unfortunately, within no time, it became impossible to keep that going. And we had to pull the plug totally on all in-house kind of gatherings and proceeded to institute a total lockdown of the country. This was a very bitter pill for Kenyans to swallow, but it was a necessary measure to help curb the virus and protect the people of Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just highlight just some of the key measures that we took. Some of them, again, have been mentioned by some of the speakers before me, so I will not bother elaborating. But the first of these, as has been stated, was communication. Poor communication results in confusion. And as we all know, communication during such a season as COVID was very important. Keeping the people informed and giving hope as they wondered what would happen next. So as a government, we agreed that the National Emergency Response Committee would be solely responsible for all forms of communication around the pandemic. And to this end, I authorize that only the Cabinet Secretary for Health would speak on behalf of the government on all matters related to COVID to avoid any kind of misunderstanding or misinformation, and he became the single source of truth, so to say, about measures on the disease. The only other communication that was permitted was from yours truly, who would speak from time to time when landmark decisions needed to be made, especially those related to the lockdown, economic stimulus, and calls for calm, and so on. And as many of you will recall, I did endeavor in a good number of times to ensure that during those occasions, I was also flanked by leaders of the opposition to further reassure Kenyans that this was truly a national crisis. We did realize that this did contain the pandemic and the panic, especially in these times of social media, but it also ensured that as a government, we controlled the narrative. With regard to health, occasioned by the big number of COVID patients, it became imperative for us to upgrade a good number of our health facilities to help with patient control. The public sector, private sector, as well as our military, all joined forces in handling the ballooning number of patients. As a government, we went ahead and put in resources, redid and rejigged our budget in order to be able to build additional hospitals and to increase the capacity of existing medical facilities. We also, at the time, knew that we were not financially prepared and we needed to source funding for us to be able to deal or take challenges of the lockdown. Was that it resulted also in our revenue collections dwindling at a time when the country needed these resources the most. And we had to grapple consistently with how we were going to finance our operations, but at the same time keep the nation moving. So as a government, we created a COVID-19 fund, a kitty that would fund emergency response towards containing the spread, its effects and impacts. But we also said in sharing the burden occasioned by this pandemic, we said we had to lead from the front, and myself as president and the deputy president took an immediate salary cut of 80% of our salaries. Cabinet secretaries, I don't know whether they were happy or not, but I ordered that they take 30% cuts. And principal secretaries and other top officials, we gave them the chance to volunteer to take 20% pay cuts in order to show that commitment and leadership starts at the top. We also called on well-wishers, and in this regard, I really want to thank our Kenyan private sector, because despite the challenges that they themselves were facing, they came out strongly in support to ensure that at least the most vulnerable were able to put food on their tables. This especially because a huge part of our Kenyan workforce was casual. And many of our urban citizens rely on a daily income to sustain themselves. And we recognize this, because those casuals, with many of them now at home as a result of the lockdown, and who depended on that daily income to feed themselves, now had basically no source of income. And the big question became, how could we effectively look after this part of our population? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how my government came up with the Kazi Mtaani program. And the Kazi Mtaani program was intended to put money in people's pockets in order for them to be able to sustain themselves during that difficult time. In rural areas, people had their small plots and their ngombes and their mbuzis. But in urban areas, this was very difficult. So therefore, unlike what some people tried to indicate that this was a political agenda, it was socially, totally aimed at ensuring that these Kenyans who, through no fault of their own, were unable to go to their places of work, at least would have an opportunity to earn a living and be able to continue to support their families during that most difficult time. The other big question that we had was how some of our industries could continue to produce. Because as you remember, as I said earlier, this was not just a health crisis. It was also a social and economic one. And how we would keep our economy afloat despite this setback. Medical products and supplies were running low with the entire globe fighting the pandemic, and it became difficult to readily access many products. And once again, I want to thank our private sector because upon consultation, we commissioned our manufacturing industry to begin using their existing lines to make things like ICU beds and units from scratch, to increase oxygen production, to make masks as opposed to T-shirts and other things that they were making for other markets. They started making masks, they started making PPEs, they started making sanitizers, they started making all manner of medical equipment that was to prove critical during this period. And we also realized that the need was growing as the virus was spreading far and wide and in scales that we had not witnessed, that without, once again, the help of private sector, we would not have been able to keep the deaths to the levels that they were. We were further, as a result of that initiative, able to increase our ICU beds from, at the time, 537 to 1,353 ICU beds, a good number of those made by our local manufacturers, giving those infected by the virus a fighting chance. We were also able to build many physical isolation units, and we could transform, and as again Amit has said, some hotels and others graciously gave us access and schools to their facilities, which could be transformed into isolation centers that were affordable to the average Kenyan. Secondly, I've mentioned that, we also introduced a stimulus package, and I've mentioned about Kazi Mtaani and where it came to. But we also realized we had to increase from those, especially civil servants and others, and the average Kenyan worker. We realized that we also needed to increase their disposable income during this difficult time. And we came up with measures such as, for all those earning 24,000 shillings and less, we released and relieved them from tax deductions, VAT, pay as you earn, and such other things to Kaondoa, so that people would have more disposable income. We reduced our VAT by 2%. just to mention but a few of the actions that we took to help ease the pressure on Kenyans. And by the way, I must also recall that the Kazi Mtaani program went a long way, not only to help provide an income for many thousands of Kenyans who were out of work, but it also went a long way to help us prevent a lot of diseases that were related to dirt and filth, illnesses like diarrhea, cholera, malaria. By extension, we were fighting coronavirus, putting money into people's pockets, but at the same time, we realized that that action was also helping us deal with other common diseases that had afflicted many, especially in our urban centers. And most importantly, it kept our youth away from indulging in crime-related viruses. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are just a few of the measures that we took to help us grapple with this menace of COVID-19. But I also want to talk a little bit about vaccines, because when news came that vaccines had been found and were available, that good news that was spread on CNN and BBC and everywhere else, making us all totally very excited, we soon realized that that news was not for us on the African continent, it was for others, since these vaccines were not available to us. But we were told now how they are available, but the good news, unfortunately, was not for Africa. We couldn't access. And so, at a continental level, we sat as an African Union, convened meetings, and for the very first time discussed how would we as Africans avail ourselves of these much-needed vaccines. To cut a long story short, after many numerous discussions, working together under the coordination of Africa CDC, we were able to find adequate vaccines for our people. But that would not have been possible without the coordination and the collaboration of Africa as a whole. This was a great eye-opener for many of us, and at that stage, I must appreciate the African Union under the leadership of Moussa Faki and the then Director General of Africa CDC for recognizing that it was important that the Union come up with a framework that would spearhead the development and access of COVID-19 vaccines to Africa. Again, at that time, I was the chair of the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, as again has been said by my brother, Dr. Davis. And for the very first time, we managed to pull together with the nation states of the Caribbean and the Pacific, who were also facing similar challenges to ourselves, and worked closely with them to make vaccines readily available for them as well. And in this, it was the first time since pre-independence that Africa and the Caribbean had collaborated so closely to face a common threat. Too many negative narratives were making their rounds also, and this was another big challenge, about the side effects of the vaccine. Some from some very important sources, some from churches, from others. Narratives that we as a government knew that if we didn't counter, would continue to create problems. And this is one of the biggest challenges many of you will face going back to the issue of communication. Negative narratives, misinformation, disinformation, driven by social media, AI-generated propaganda. This is going to be your biggest challenge going forward. How do you deal and ensure that citizens across the continent are armed with the correct and factual information? I also believe that a lot still has to be done to educate and equip our masses on the importance of vaccines, not just this COVID vaccine, but in preparation for the future. And our leadership, both at continental, national, and community levels, must take a role in this. Today, you are all here to deliberate on global health security systems, something that is critical and crucial, because it comes at a time that we need to be prepared, not if a pandemic shall occur again, but when that pandemic occurs, that it should not catch us flat-footed as did COVID-19. This, I believe, ladies and gentlemen, is an opportunity for you to discuss ways and means of how we can be better prepared to face any new pandemic that may arise in the future. And again, I emphasize that it is a matter of if, it is a matter of when, not if. And also as Africans, not to wait for others to come to our rescue. As I told you, our excitement when we watched CNN and BBC and everybody else celebrate these new vaccines that were being rolled out. But as we were celebrating watching the TV, none of this was coming to us. So my friends, any future pandemic that comes, don't think anybody out there is going to come and look up. They'll look after themselves first. Then if there's any surplus, bas mutapatiwa ile mabaki mebaki, mujisaidie ile kidogo kidogo tu mtupiwe tu mkule huko kando. Hata mutapatiwa bure. Kwa sababu sasa at that time hakuna shida, wamejitengeneza, nyinyi sasa shauri yenu. So you have to actually see how we ourselves are at the center of the discussion of any future pandemic that may occur, and how we as Africans are going to be prepared with our own resources, with our own vaccines, with our own research, with our own academia, with our own private sectors, to prepare ourselves to face any future challenges. And let me conclude by saying that whether we like it or not, funding for this has to come from ourselves. Yeah? It has to come from ourselves, because we have to begin to reprioritize what is important for us as Africans on the continent, and where should our resources go. And towards that end, to remember the amount of resource we waste killing each other. When you see the devastation caused across this continent by the many unnecessary wars, Sudan, DRC, all across the Sahel, all across the continent, we have actually lost more people to bullets fired by Africans on Africans than we actually lost to the coronavirus. And we have actually spent more buying those bullets to kill ourselves than we have actually spent on protecting our health and our societies. So an end to war and a collaboration towards putting an end to these conflicts and being able to repurpose our resources to where they shall have the greatest impact on our population shall remain the biggest and most critical agenda for the African continent. Let us be ready and let us be prepared. Let us be self-reliant by ensuring that we deal with the challenges that we have in order for us to be able to free resources for where they are most needed. I saw some people the other day crying, oh, I don't know, Trump has removed money. He said he's not giving us any more money. Watu wanalia. Why are you crying? It's not your government, it's not your country. He has no reason to give you anything. I mean, you don't pay taxes in America. He is appealing to his people. Shauri yenu bwana. This is a wake-up call for you to say, okay, what are we going to do to help ourselves? Instead of crying, tujiulize, what are we going to do? Haya ametoa hiyo pesa, sasa tutafanya namna gani jameni? What are we going to do? Yeah? To support ourselves. Because nobody is going to continue holding out a hand there to give you. It is time for us to use our resources for the right things. We are the ones who are using them for the wrong things. Yeah? The bullets and the guns we buy, we are not given for free. We buy them. And we're not buying them to go and fight wars off our shores. We are fighting our own people. Hapa too. Yeah? Brother killing sister, sister killing brother. Over stupid things. Yeah? Let us work together to bring an end to all of that and to focus ourselves on those issues that really matter for our people. I thank you very much.